head because we're just you and me and Mr. Gibbs. It is difficult for me to make sense of how the administration believes the best to address our nation's water-related infrastructure, because as a candidate, he proposed tripling requests for clean and drinking water state revolving funds, but they didn't materialize in his budget. It sure didn't come through in his fiscal year 2018 budget. And now we hear that the majority of his forthcoming infrastructure investment proposal will involve leveraged private sector financing rather than infusion of additional federal capital into the state revolving fund programs. In my view, the model leaves behind many mid-sized and small communities, and rural, of course, that may be unable to compete with larger cities and unable to afford the costs of leveraged private capital. In your view, all of you, if the plan is heavily dependent on leveraged private capital, would this miss the mark in addressing infrastructure needs of many mid-sized and small communities? And if you were to make recommendations to Congress on the appropriate mechanisms to address these needs, what programs would you recommend to fund and what levels? Anybody, everybody.
Ranking member. Yes, is the...
A short answer, please.
Yes, certainly. As others have said, private money is not a panacea, and the bottom line on it is that when private money comes in to invest in a system, there has to still be a revenue stream to pay back that private investment. And so it ultimately comes down to whether the community, whether the ratepayers can afford that expense without financial assistance, especially in the form of grants from the federal government, from state government. So that private money is simply not a panacea.
Go ahead, Ms. Cooper.
Oh, thank you. Definitely the recommendation for the Internal Revenue Code to remove the state volume caps for private activity bonds, as well as preserving our muni bonds.
That would help.
Yes, definitely.
Mr. Proctor.
And going back to the WIFIA program, right now that program is set up for the most part to deal with $20 million projects, $5 million in a smaller setting. But as it's currently structured, it does tend to favor projects that are probably financed okay to begin with. If there's a way that that program could be tweaked and tap into its leveraging feature so that it could help out more distressed utilities, that would be a positive thing.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. I think certainly there's value to leverage private capital, but I think we cannot overlook the importance of continuing to capitalize the SRF program. And we would support your bill and your recommendation and look at even enhancing that program to the $3 to $4 billion range.
St. Pierre.
You know, just repeat that, you know, when you are loaning money for 1.75% versus 3% or 6%, and what you're doing is you're reducing the amount of work that you can do. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do. A full support of SRF funding is critical.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, we've got a history of working with the Corps of Engineers, the Bureau of Reclamation, the SRF, and so forth, and most of these funds have dried up. We're looking at pretty significant increases in rates to be able to accommodate some of these projects, and as I mentioned, the projects we're looking at are in excess of $100 million, and so when you look to a federal agency that the most they can provide is $20 million over a 3 to 4 year time frame because they're competing, you're having to compete with other entities, it's not even close to saying it's not going to have a significant impact on ratepayers.
Okay. Mr. Franklin.
Thank you. Whether municipal or regulated utility, I think there's a myriad of answers to this, not a single bullet, and I think we've all come to that conclusion. I will say, though, that probably half of the customers we service are in small, rural areas. And it's the economies of scale, whether you're municipal or not, that really come to bear. Even though these systems aren't interconnected, they're the same people, so they can share employees, share knowledge. And so that, that ability to reduce this 50,000 water systems in the country to some manageable number that really allows us to bring economies of scale will be make us all long-term more viable.
Thank you very much, and I would ask that if you have those recommendations, please put them in writing so this committee can look at them and take them into consideration. There's lots of impacts to the business community that if you don't have clean water, you don't have economy, so it's important for them too. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.